Anna's excitement was short-lived. As they left the willow grove and neared the base of the North Mountain, the terrain began to change. The beauty that had awed Anna just a short while ago was gone. In its place was something far more menacing. Icicles stuck out horizontally from the mountain, like spears on the front lines of battle. The wind was stronger now too, whipping at Anna's face and stinging her cheeks. Ugh. It was like seeing the other side of her sister's personality. Thus, Willows and Olaf were the kind, sweet part of Elsa. This was the scared and lonely part. So how exactly are you planning to stop this weather? Kristoff asked, gesturing to their surroundings. Oh, I am going to talk to my sister, Anna said, feigning more confidence than she actually felt. Kristoff stopped mid-stride and stared at her. That's your plan? He asked in disbelief. My ice business is riding on you talking to your sister? Yep, Anna replied, stopping to return his stare. Kristoff groaned and resumed trudging through the snow. Anna was surprised he had let the conversation just drop like that and was about to say so when he heard him shout, Whoa! Whipping around, she saw that he was standing perilously close to an icicle. One more step and it would have stabbed him right in the nose. So you're not at all afraid of her? He asked, reaching up to make sure his nose was open. Why would I be? Anna retorted. She might have crazy ice powers, but this is still Elsa we're talking about. Anna confidently strode forward, all the way into a dead end. On the plus side, they had arrived at the base of the North Mountain. On the downside, the spot they had come to was a spot that rose straight up into the sky. What now? Anna asked, turning to Olaf, Kristoff, and Sven. Kristoff craned his head back as he examined the mountain. Then he looked up at Anna's hopeful face. He sighed. It's too steep, he said as he spoke. He opened his bag and began digging around in it. I've only got one rope and you don't know how to climb mountains. Says who? Replied, pleased to see the surprised expression on Kristoff's face when he looked up and found her clinging to the mountain. She hated when people doubted her. And really, how hard could climbing be? You find footholds for your feet and handholds for your hands, then you climb. Although she thought as she scanned the rock face in front of her, I don't really see that many places to hold on. What are you doing? Kristoff asked. Anna didn't risk turning around, but she could hear the mocking tone in Kristoff's voice, and it only served to spur her on. I'm going to see my sister. You're gonna kill yourself, Kristoff explained. Ignoring him, she reached her leg out, straining for a small ledge. I wouldn't put my foot there. Anna ignored his warning and placed her foot on the ledge. Her legs shook as she tried to steady herself, but she was thrilled when she was able to move a little farther up the mountain. Ha! So there, Mr. Know-It-All. A few more slick moves like that and I'll be on my way. Order, Kristoff said as she once again moved her foot. Then he added, How do you know Elsa even wants to see you? I'm just blocking you out because I have to concentrate here, Anna said over her shoulder, and because I don't need to be reminded that my sister basically ran away from me, she added silently. Failing to pick up on the fact that Anna was clearly not in the mood for self-reflection, Kristoff kept pushing. You know, he said, most people who disappear in the mountains want to be alone. Nobody wants to be alone. Except maybe you, Anna shot back. Her fingers were beginning to go numb, and she was pretty sure that if muscles could scream, hers would be shouting horrible things at her right now. The last thing she wanted to be doing was talking to Kristoff about relationships again. Just because he had so-called friends who were love experts didn't make him a genius on the subject. And seriously, did this mountain have so few handholds, where there was no more places to put her hands or feet on? Anna was stuck. "Please tell me I'm almost there," she asked, sadly risking a look down. She saw that her big climb had taken her up about 6 feet. "Okay, that's a little embarrassing," Anna admitted silently. "Hey, Sven," Olaf shouted, addressing Kristoff. He and Anna turned and looked over at the little snowman. "Not sure if this is gonna solve the problem, but I found a staircase that leads exactly where you wanted to go." "Thank goodness," Anna said, "catch." Then, without even looking down, she let go of the mountain and threw herself backwards, right into Kristoff's arms. Looking up at him, she smiled. "Thanks, that was like a crazy trust exercise." Then, jumping free, she ran after Olaf. Behind her, she could feel Kristoff's gaze following her, and it made her flash hot for a moment. She hadn't failed to notice when she landed in Kristoff's arms that it felt kind of nice to be held by someone so big and warm. But just like that, Anna pushed the feeling aside. Catching up to Olaf, she grabbed his little stick hand, and together they began the long climb up the stairs that would hopefully lead to Elsa. Hans was pleased. The group of men he had put together were more than capable and had so far offered up no resistance to his leadership, except for the Duke of Lesselton's men. Those two, he thought now, glancing back at the men, are going to be trouble unless I figure out a way to change their loyalty. For the moment, though, Hans was content to just wait and see how things played out. It would do him no good to focus on his attention on anything other than finding Anna. They had been following Anna's tracks for a few hours. At first, it hadn't been too difficult. Her horse had left a clear path of broken branches on his gallop back toward Arendelle, but they had come to the point where Anna and her horse had clearly parted ways. The impression could be seen in the white powder beneath the tree, and the tree itself was one of the few without snow. Its branches. "She must have fallen off here," Hans thought, jumping off his own horse to examine the area. "Yes, she must definitely landed beneath this tree." He reached up, his fingers brushing the soft needles of the fir tree. "She was probably stunned," Hans said to the men who sat astride their horses waiting. "But then she would have tried to stand up." He lay down on the ground, reenacting the scene as it played out in his head. "She would have used these branches for support. They would have been covered in snow and hanging out low to the ground. You see, when Anna grabbed on, the snow would have been knocked loose, which is why the tree looks bare now. And then what would have my Anna done?" His voice trailed off as he looked around. Hans loved that the men were all looking at him, seeming awed by his impressive tracking skills. The only problem was he wasn't actually very good at tracking at all. He had just been following the horse's path up to this point. The heavy beasts had left plenty of clues to follow, but now he would have to follow Anna, as she was far more delicate than this horse. "Sir," one of the men called out, "could she have gone this way?" Looking over, Hans let out a breath. Hans saw that they led away from the tree and toward a small stream, and in the distance, rising up over a small hill of smoke. "Princess Anna must be over there." Jumping back over his horse, kicking the horse into a trot, he headed toward the smoke. Behind him, the jingle of bits and stirrups let know that his men were following. A few minutes later, Hans found himself standing in the front of a wood cabin. A small set of stairs leading up to a porch and the front door, a sign reading Wandering Oaken's Trading Post hung down with a smaller sign attached that read Ansana. Hans smiled hopefully. Anna is inside. Then we can head back to Arendelle and get out of this wretched snow, and if she's moved on, well, perhaps someone inside knows where she's gone. Men, you wait here. Keep an eye out while I go in and see if my princess isn't here. Hans commanded, dismounting. Hans tied up his horse and moved toward the stairs. Then, thinking of it, he paused and turned back. You two, he said, pointing at the Duke's men. You come with me. He didn't want them out of his sight. Hans walked up the stairs and pushed the door open. Hello? He called out. It took a moment for his eyes to adjust. The sun on the snow had been blinding. In comparison, the interior of the trading post was dark. Slowly, shapes began to emerge. He could make out shelves, dry goods, a door that, due to its seamy nature, had to lead to the sauna, and a mountain. Hans shook his head and blinked his eyes rapidly. When his vision cleared, he realized he wasn't looking at a real mountain. He was instead looking at a mountain of a man. Woohoo! Big summer blowout, the human mountain said. He was standing behind the counter, his finger drumming on the wood. Perhaps you would like some balm of my own invention? He held up a brown bottle and smiled hopefully. Hans smiled back, mimicking the man's expression. He was hopeful as well, but while this man was eager for a sale, Hans was eager for information. Glancing around the room, Hans quickly tried to get a sense of this huge man. The more I knew, he mused, the easier it is to manipulate. He quickly deduced several things. One, the man had terrible taste in sweaters. Two, he had clearly fancied himself a businessman when the first thing was only useful in that Hans knew what sweater to never wear. If he were a 7-foot man who was at least 3 feet wide, the second item was valuable. Businessmen were driven. They knew the worth of money, and they usually knew a good deal when they saw it. They also, Hans knew from experience, tended to do what was best for their business and themselves. While that character trait might always win their friends, in this situation it was certainly going to help Hans get what he wanted. Hello there, Hans said, approaching the counter and holding out his hand. I am Prince Hans of the Southern Isles. I am looking for someone and hoping you might be able to help me. The big man's smile did not grow bigger or smaller. It stayed exactly the same. He was clearly not impressed with Hans' title. I am Oaken, he said. Would you like some pants without legs, my own invention? Half price? Maybe some for you too, big fellas? He waved at the Duke's men, who were standing back, stone-faced. Hans shook his head. We're actually all set for pants, he said. We just stopped in because I have reason to believe that my beloved Princess Anna may have stopped in here not so long ago. I love, Oaken said. That is nice. Maybe you will be wanting some books on love. I have many. Hans grimaced. I am sure your selection is wonderful, but I don't really need any books. What I do need is my beautiful Princess Anna. Hans' voice trailed off as Oaken remained impassive. This was getting him nowhere. Fine, I would love a book. Instantly, Oaken's blank expression disappeared and was replaced by a huge grin. Woohoo, that is good. Which story would you like? Hans could feel the Duke's men watching him, judging his inability to get an answer, and infuriated him. He didn't want anyone to see him as ineffectual, especially the Duke's men, who would be all too happy to report their observations back to the man who'd sent them. But he hadn't trusted them alone outside, so now he was stuck with them as witnesses to what was turning into a colossal headache. Hans clenched his fist. Businessman, he reminded himself. Oaken is a businessman, so why don't I take a little business and see what that gets me? Clearly the big man was obliging when people were buying things, so Hans would just have to buy things. Lots of things. Oaken, on second thought, Hans said, mirroring the big man's grin, I do think we will take some pants without legs. Hans scanned the store, looking for more odd things to purchase. Oh, and some carrots. The horses would appreciate carrots, I'm sure. Ooh, Oaken cried, pleased with his sudden windfall. He began to bag up the items. As he held up the carrots, he added, That is true, horses do enjoy tasty treats. So do reindeers. In fact, I just sold some carrots to a pretty girl with a white streak in her hair a few hours ago. A girl with white in her hair? Hans repeated. She was here? Why didn't you say so in the first place? That is the princess. My princess. Oaken shrugged. Apologies. Then he held up a bag. Perhaps you'd like a bag, yeah? Hans sucked in his breath, and he tried to remain calm. I don't care. He threw a large pouch of coins on the counter. Please, just tell me where the girl went. Picking up the pouch, Oakens emptied it on the counter and began to count the coins very carefully. She bought some supplies for that sneaky ice harvester, he said, and they left for the North Mountain. He finished counting and handed Hans his change. Have a good day. Mumbling a thank you, Hans turned and headed back outside in a bit of a fog. It didn't make sense. Anna had left the store with another man. Who was he? Was someone else trying to win Anna's heart? Anna's hand and the throne? Well, that man had no idea what he was up against. Hans hadn't made it this far to walk away without a fight. Sir! The sound of one of his men's voices broke into Hans's internal monologue. Looking around, he saw that everyone was waiting on his orders. I just learned, after a quick and easy interrogation, that Princess Anna has gone up to the North Mountain. He ignored the Duke's men, who both raised their eyebrows, and instead pointed at a group of the townsfolk who had volunteered. Let's split up. You four go west and look for a way up the mountain. The rest of us will go east. With luck, we shall meet atop the North Mountain and rescue Princess Anna. Hans held back to make sure that both groups seemed sure where they were going. When he was certain, Hans kicked his horse forward. Coming up behind the Duke's men, he was surprised to hear his name. He pulled back on the reins. Did you see him trying to get answers from that big oaf? The taller one said. It was pathetic. If the Duke were here, he would have had the bad guy talking in no time. The shorter man twirled his long mustache in his fingers and laughed. He would have had them screaming in no time, you mean, he said gleefully. The rest of the men's words were lost to Hans as the wind picked up and the pair trotted ahead, but he had heard enough. So the Duke would have resorted to violence. How ironic that his men are calling me the idiot when he clearly doesn't have the forethought to think about what reacting calmly and rationally can achieve. True violence could work, but only brutes use violence. Brutes like his brothers who wouldn't have known how to talk out a problem if they put all their brains together. Hans couldn't count the number of times he had tried to find a peaceful way out of the situation, only to find himself being pummeled or stuck in the pigsty or thrown off a moving cart, and his father had been no better. His solution when one of his farmers had a problem he didn't like had been to burn the man's barns down. or take all his livestock. It never failed to surprise Hans that a man who ruled such a vast kingdom could be so stupid. Violence begat violence. It was inevitable, and yet that was all his family knew. Hans shuddered. No, he had enough violence to last him a lifetime. He would not sink to his brother's level. He would not let himself be like them, not if he could help it. So maybe a well-thought-out plan didn't yield the swiftest result. It still yielded one eventually. Hans nodded, reassuring himself. Yes, I got what I wanted. I know where I was heading, and I know I can get more information from Oaken if I ever need it in the future. The same could not be said if the Duke had dealt with it himself. Looking ahead, Hans watched two men who had so easily mocked him, so they didn't respect to him. That was fine. It just meant that their guard was down and that they wouldn't interfere with his plans. But if they did, well, while he didn't favor violence, it could certainly have its benefits when used wisely. When Olaf had told him about a staircase leading up to a mountain, Anna had pictured a steeply sloping path of jagged rocks. So when a little snowman led them to a beautiful, intricate staircase made completely of ice, Anna was at a loss for words. Even more breathtaking was the frozen palace at the top of the steps. Glistening spires reached toward this clear blue sky above them. Each frosty turret had the detailed look of being hand sculpted. Which Anna realized they were probably in an icy magic kind of way. Whoa! Anna breathed out in awe. Beside her, she heard Kristoff gasp. When she looked over, he had his hand on his heart. Now that's ice, he said reverently. I might cry. Go ahead, Anna replied. I won't judge. And she was being honest. Stepping forward, Anna gingerly put one foot on the bottom step of the icy staircase and pushed. Better safe than sorry, she thought, waiting to see if the ice would crack under the pressure. It didn't, and she began to climb, one hand holding tight to the railing. As she got closer, Anna could make out more details. Elaborate carvings of snowflakes were etched in the sides of the palace, which glowed and shimmered in the light. To their left, she saw a balcony and wondered if her sister was up there somehow. Was up there somewhere. Reaching the top of the stairs, Anna paused in front of the palace's large door. Like everything else, they were beautiful and intricate, the result of something deep and wonderful inside Elsa. I wish everyone back in Arendelle could see this place, Anna thought. Now, I've only seen the devastation Elsa can cause, but that was because they saw only what Elsa can do if she is lashing out in fear. This place is what comes from letting go and following her heart. This is the Elsa I know who will want to make things right in Arendelle. Hearing heavy breathing beside her, Anna turned and saw that Kristoff and Olaf had followed her. Flawless, Kristoff said, staring at the doors. Anna nodded in agreement. Her fingers reached out, tracing the delicate etchings carved into ice. She could see pictures of her sister in every detail. One long line of ice curved around and around itself, reminding Anna of Elsa as a young girl when she would twirl in circles, laughing as the skirt of her dress billowed out around her. Small carved snowflakes brought back a memory of Elsa sticking out her tongue and giggling. "Look, Anna," she had cried. "It's snowflake candy." Anna had laughed and laughed, sticking out her own tongue. It was a vague memory, but it still filled Anna with warmth and sadness. She raised her hand, preparing herself to knock, but she hesitated. How many times had she stood in front of a closed door, hoping Elsa would let her in, and here she was, same situation with a very different type of door. The thought of being shut out again was almost unbearable. Then she shook her head. How could she ask the people of Arendelle to give her sister another chance if she couldn't even do it herself? She had come all this way because she wanted to give Elsa a chance. "Knock," she heard Olaf say encouragingly. Her hand came closer, but still she didn't touch the door. "Why isn't she knocking?" Olaf asked Kristoff. "Do you think she knows how to knock?" "This is getting ridiculous," Anna scolded herself. "What's the worst that can happen?" She doesn't answer. It's not like you don't know how that feels, so just go ahead and knock, knock. On the other side of the door, Anna could hear sound echo through the palace. She held her breath, waiting for the usual to happen, but this time, instead of staying shut, the doors to Elsa's world swung open. "Ha!" Anna said, shouted, clapping her hands together happily. It opened. That's a first. As she moved a step inside, Anna paused on the threshold, and she turned to look at Kristoff. "You should probably wait out here," she said gently. "What?" Kristoff asked, confused. "Last time I introduced her to a guy, she froze everything," Anna replied. But, oh, come on, it's a palace made of ice," Kristoff said, as though Anna were insane. "Ice is my life." Anna felt bad, but she knew she couldn't risk his life just so he could see what was, in essence, the world's most elaborate ice sculpture. Besides, this conversation with Elsa was one she needed to have alone. "You too, Olaf," she said, stopping the snowman as he began to walk through the door. He looked up at her with big, hopeful snowman eyes. "Me?" She shook her head. "Just give us a minute, okay?" "A minute is all I'm going to need to find out just how upset Elsa is," Anna added silently. Taking a deep breath, she stepped into the grand hallway. It was showtime. "Elsa? Elsa, it's me, Anna." Inside the palace, Anna's words bounced off the frozen walls. Loud and otherwise eerie silence. It was as beautiful inside as it was outside, but there was something lonely about it. Doors had opened into a huge entire entryway with a soaring ceiling. An elegant ice chandelier hung down and across the room, a carved staircase led up to another floor. But there was no pictures, no person touches. It was, for lack of a better word, cold. Taking one more glance around the room to make her sure Elsa wasn't hiding in the shadows, Anna made her way across the icy floor toward the staircase. The stairs were slick and the railing thin and hard to hold. As she climbed, Anna held her breath, sure that each step she took would have her slipping and sliding back down. As if on cue, Anna's foot slipped and she lost her balance, clutching the rail. She struggled to steady herself. When she was finally sure that the worst was over, she looked up. To her surprise, Elsa stood at the top of the staircase. "Anna," Elsa said, as though she couldn't quite believe what she was seeing. As for Anna, she definitely couldn't believe what she was seeing. Elsa, you look different. It's a good different, but her voice trailed off. Her sister wasn't just different, she was transformed. The woman standing there was the most beautiful person Anna had ever seen. Elsa's white blonde hair was no longer pulled back in a tight bun. Now it hung loose in a loose braid over her shoulder, the silver strands catching the light and shimmering as if lit from within. The last time Anna had seen her sister, Elsa had been wearing her coronation dress with long sleeves and a high neckline. It had been a lovely dress, Anna admitted to herself, staring up at her sister in awe, but now Elsa looked, well, stunning. No, it's more than the dress and the hair, Anna realized. She looks free. Anna smiled and took a few steps closer to her sister. This place is amazing, she said as she walked. Thank you, Elsa said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear nervously. I never knew what I was capable of. You and me both, Anna wanted to say, but instead she apologized. I'm so sorry about what happened. If I had have known... She reached out her hand hopefully. Elsa recoiled as though Anna were a viper. No, it's okay. You don't have to apologize, but you should probably go, she said, backing away. Please, but I just got here, Anna said, climbing another step. You belong down in Arendelle, her sister said, backing up more still. So do you. No, Anna, I belong here, alone, where I can be who I am without hurting anybody. Actually, about that, Anna began, ready to clarify that Elsa probably had hurt somebody already, and I'm not even counting myself in the loneliness I felt from all those years of silence, she thought, but she stopped herself. She wanted her sister to come home, not to scare her so badly that she stayed up here for the rest of her life. She closed her mouth as she tried to figure out the best way to respond to her sister's stubborn need for isolation. Before she could come up with anything, she was interrupted by the sound of Olaf counting. 58, 59, 60. Despite herself, Anna smiled. The cute little guy had taken her quite literally when she said she needed a minute. Bursting into the great hall, Olaf saw Anna and Elsa and waved. Hi, I'm Olaf and I like warm hugs. As he wobbled up the stairs, Anna watched her sister. Confusion flashed across Elsa's face, followed by fear, and then shock. And the good thing was the last emotion on Elsa's face before Olaf reached Anna was wonder. Olaf? She said. You're alive? The little snowman hesitated, then shrugged. I think so, he answered uncertainly. Anna knew what her sister must have been thinking. She had been thinking herself not so long ago. He's just like the one we built as kids, Anna said, kneeling down next to Olaf. Yeah, Elsa said. Elsa, we were so close. We can be like that again. To Anna's surprise, Elsa smiled, but as quickly as it came, the smile faded, replaced by a look of pain. Whatever Elsa was thinking about, it wasn't the warm and happy memory Anna had envisioned when she first met Olaf. No, we can't, Elsa said, turning. She headed towards another flight of stairs. Goodbye, Anna. Elsa, wait! No, I'm just trying to protect you, Elsa called over her shoulder. You don't have to protect me, Anna said, following her sister. I'm not afraid. Please don't shut me out again. Why can't she understand? Anna thought as she pursued her sister up the stairs. I get it. She had to grow up with powers she didn't understand. It must have been terrifying, but if she had let me in, then maybe we wouldn't be here now. Doesn't she see that I'm just as alone as she is, and it doesn't have to be that way? neither of us have to, neither of us has to be alone or afraid. We could have each other if Elsa would just let me in. Maybe Kristoff was right. Maybe Anna was being naive to think that she could just walk in there and make everything alright. Even if she doesn't want to forgive me, I thought she at least would be concerned about the people back in Airedale, unless maybe she doesn't know. Anna caught up to her sister just as Elsa walked onto the huge balcony. As Anna spotted from outside the distance, the sun was sinking in the sky, causing the ice underneath their feet to shimmer in shades of gold, purple, and red. Anna's movement caught Elsa's attention, and Elsa spun around. Anna gulped. It was now or never. Sighing, she pointed down at the frozen ground. You kind of set off an eternal winter everywhere. Her sister's face filled with fear, breaking Anna's heart. It's okay, you can just freeze it, she said. No, I can't. I don't know how. Sure you can, Anna said, not willing to give up on Elsa, her sister. I know you can, and she did know it. Elsa could come home and fix it. It would all be okay. But it wasn't okay. It wasn't okay at all. As Anna watched, Elsa began to twirl nervously around the room. I'm such a fool, she shouted as a strong wind began to whip around her legs. Snow began to fall from the ceiling, and the room's temperature dropped instantly. Beneath Elsa's feet, another layer of ice began to form. Don't panic, Anna cried, trying to calm her sister. The last time her sister had gone like this, Arendelle had ended up in deep, deep snow, but it was no use. Elsa was beyond listening. Ice was beginning to form on her fingertips, and the gently falling snow had turned into a full blizzard. Raising her arms to protect her eyes from the sting of the snow, Anna tried to find her sister, but all she could hear was the howling wind. Elsa, please, she shouted. We can change this. I can't! As if in slow motion, Anna watched as Elsa's scream caused the blizzard to swirl out of control. There was tense pause, and then the snow shot out at Anna. She sank to the floor, grasping her chest in pain. And instantly it felt like her body was turning to ice from the inside out, and she began to shiver, reaching a hand down to steady herself. She was only vaguely aware of Elsa's tortured cry and the sound of footsteps as Kristoff burst into the room. All she could hear was her own heart pounding painfully in her chest. Anna, Kristoff's worried voice broke into the thoughts. Are you okay? Raising her eyes to meet Kristoff's, she was surprised to see that he looked scared. No, I'm okay. I'm fine, Anna said, pushing herself to her feet. True, she felt like she was going to be sick, but she wasn't going to let anybody see how much pain she was in. She was there for her sister, and Elsa still needed her. Elsa, she said softly, I know we can figure this out together. But it was too late to try to reason with her sister. Anna knew it even as the words came out of her mouth. Her sister's shoulders had tensed, and her hands were now clutched at her sides. She was on the defense. How? Elsa shouted desperately. What power do you have to stop this winter? To stop me? As she spoke, sharp spikes of ice began to creep down the walls and pop up on the floor. Anna, I think we should go, Kristoff said as he wrapped a protective arm around her shoulder. She shrugged him off. No, this isn't who Elsa is. She's just scared. She's scared? Kristoff repeated. You're joking, right? I'm pretty sure she has nothing to be scared of. But Kristoff was wrong. Elsa was scared. Anna could see it. Not in the tense way she held her body, but in the desperate look in her eyes, and the way her glance kept going to Anna. It might have been years since the two had confided in each other, but Anna still knew what Elsa looked like when she was terrified. Elsa, you didn't mean any of this, Anna finally said aloud. It was an accident. We can fix this. We can fix it all. Together. I'm not leaving without you, Elsa. Yes, Elsa said, sounding heartbroken. You are. Yes. Waving her arms in the air, Elsa began to pull the snow off the floor, moving and sharpening the pattern until finally standing between her and her sister was the largest, strongest, scariest looking snowman Anna had ever seen. As the creature took one menacing step towards them, Anna and Kristoff exchanged looks. They had clearly had only one option. Run!